So I'm building off of some of the videos about the past in terms of the operating model. What I want to do is I want to start sharing insights about how much work has to go into making all this stuff work. And also, how do we exercise our skill of what empathy is? Why we have to learn to get comfortable doing things to build towards the future. And then really the challenge that I need help from you guys is how to help. So part of what I'm going to do here is I'm going to really concentrate on why I do this stuff. And I hope you can tell. Um, Making sure you understand why you're doing stuff is the critical success factor. Then being able to describe what it is the second, it's the second most important. How and when and who are all secondary. Why? What's the why? So I'm gonna share some why. I think Dave sent this out, and the exercise here is so perfect, and I want us to sort of dwell on it. Sometimes the answer is staring us right in the face, but we're so caught up in the tasks and the day to day that we're dealing with that we don't see what the real answer is. And creating the space to be innovative is something we need to create more understanding for. Not only do we need to do it ourselves, but also we have to create that structure for clients. If we are unable to do that, then the operating pressures, the staying focused on the basketball rather than looking for the gorilla pops in. The other thing that I want to share, so one is why. We have to have some tools to help see what things are. The second thing that we have to be able to do is that we have to have the courage to actually do the things and do it in a very methodical way. There is, I know that the backwards bike resonates with everybody on this call. However, you're not going through the same backwards bike. Why? So, how did Dustin actually do it? And because he did it in a methodical way, that's prototype, somebody else was able to repeat it and do it much quicker. Somebody has to do the work of riding the backwards bike in the first place. And again, that's what prototyping is. And we have to be disciplined and we can't let our emotions get out of whack, or else what we're going to be doing is just concentrating on throwing the basketball around and missing what the big picture is. And this happens over and over and over and over again. Okay. So the other part is I want to highlight why the hero's journey is so important to me. And I want to really sell this to you because we're just not using it enough. Um, well, let's put it in order of magnitude of how much we're not using it. 100. So on a scale of empathy, or on a scale of what we're driving to, it's activity, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. But really, the hero's journey is the critical success factor. And I'm going to sell you on why it resonates with me so much. Uh, I am your customer on these prototype ones. So how can you better help me? How can you better understand and plug in and support me? Well, I'm going to first tell you, sort of the logic behind this and sell you on it. And I'm breaking it down because what I've learned is that human nature is when you just share a bunch of things, you concentrate on the ball and not the gorilla. So I'm highlighting for you right from the get-go. So a format that I tend to use is say, I lead with the gorilla. And what I get back is, details about the ball, right? I need you to just sort of see what the gorilla is, and then how does that impact how you play basketball. Then the discipline is, going through your own hero's journey on your own path around something that you're interested in. Okay, so here's a hero's journey. I haven't used Tim's yet. I'm gonna make sure we understand the hero's journey from all the stuff before, make sure we have a common understanding of the hero's journey before we start sticking in details. But we have to grok this. If we don't grok this, all the information that I provide, we're going to focus on the details. We're going to focus on the basketball, not the gorilla, and we're going to continue to create churn. So familiarize with this. We need to, I'm going to create a lot of tests, I think, moving forward. And you're going to have to get through those tests uh, to, to keep working on Mindcast. I just think it's so imperative how off we are about empathy and things like that, that we have to create a greater sense of discipline around that. And I want to do it where it's fun. Hopefully Brooke will help us do that. But it's got to be disciplined regardless. Okay, so the reason I'm sharing that is what I want to do is I want to over time start sharing some lessons learned. So one of the things that's critical here about this and this is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can leverage mistakes or lessons learned from each of these different scenarios. So what I want to do is be able to say, hey, look, here's some examples from Blueprint Marketing, which I shared yesterday. Here's some examples of Forrester, which I'm gonna get into the weeds a little bit here, but I'm gonna hopefully roll it back up. And by the way, this is the other thing is we have to weave. So Dave, I need your help, actually everybody's help, but I'm talking to you, Dave, in specific. Let's try to find a way to weave the mindset shifts to the hero's journey. I think the more we anchor these things together, the better off we are. Brian, in your work on your pyramid with the performing every day, if you're not doing it mapped to the hero's journey, you're going to miss the mark. Don't move it to Maslow's hierarchy. Don't move it to an individual. Connect it to what a hero is and the hero's arc. All right. So what I'm trying to do is lay some foundation so that when I share details with this, you don't focus on the basketball, you focus on the gorilla. Okay, so I'm going to have a variety of different examples moving forward from Blueprint Marketing, Forrester, Alexander Group, Sales Enablement Society, Conference Board, Growth Enablement. What I'm going to do is pay out sort of like the one thing, the one aha, and where are we today? Okay, before we do that, I want to set some foundations. I'm a big believer that it's not about you. The way that you innovate is you build on the backs of others. And so the first in this concept of, so I think we can all admit that the world that we live in is pretty chaotic. We're living in a VUCA world. And because we're arrogant human beings, believe that no one's ever dealt with this before. And it's true. No one's ever dealt with this strain of a pandemic, but we had a pandemic in 1919, and we've had plagues before multiple times. And sometimes we take things too seriously and too literally and too detailed. We focus on the basketballs, not on the gorilla. So I like to think about the gorilla and the basketballs and have that discipline of thought. And the things that remind me to do those are quotes. So Heraclitus, I can't pronounce it. This is a guy that predated Aristotle and Plato. And one of the things that he observed in the fast-moving world of Greek civilization is the only constant in life is change. Now, one of the things that we've talked about before is the Bronze Age collapse, and in 20 years, how civilizations that have been around for 3,000 years, like Egypt, just collapse. And I think it's kind of fair to say that chaotic events, VUCA events, have been around since the dawn of man. And to try to study it in every detail rather than looking for common patterns, AKA what works or what's common. So I'm going to highlight this over and over and over again. We have to develop tools to see what works and make observations that aren't so in the weeds. But the only constant in life is change. This is from 500 years before Christ. Then another, so this is 300 AD. So look, it's 1,200 years apart. And Marcus Aurelius, who was considered one of the last great emperors of Rome, was actually a philosopher too. No kidding. And he wrote some books. And a lot of people who are into meditation now are actually picking up some of those books that Marcus Aurelius wrote. It's pretty pretty profound stuff. And one of the things that he lived his life by is the universe has changed. Our life is what our thoughts make it. The universe has changed. Our life is what our thoughts make it. So, Marcus Aurelius is a pretty successful person, right? So that, what does that mean? It means that um, the environment around you, that you can find information. You can choose to find information that tells you you suck, or you can find information that tells you you're great, or you can find information that says no one's figured something out. And if you choose to spend your time focusing on the basketballs instead of being open-minded for the gorilla, um, you're always going to be stuck in the same way. Then there's the chaos imperative. If you haven't read the book, read the book. This book resonated so much with me. I followed it. Now I can critique every sentence of this with absolute clarity. And if you want to understand the lessons learned, and at the end of a journey, watch the video of Ori Brofman and I at the end of a journey. And sort of the last quote that really resonates with me, that puts a package to all of this, is this quote resonates with me so much because I'm a believer on building off what people have done before, that when you leverage other human beings, you're not alone. And when you embrace humanity and concentrate on both the negatives and the positives, you can lean into the negatives and turn them into positives. You can turn lemons into lemonade, but you just have to recognize there's going to be a lot of tension at that moment, and you've got to have tools to be able to manage all of those people's emotions. So what's past is prologue, William Shakespeare. Now, I've really thought a lot about this quote. Geez, I've always liked this, but I couldn't really grok it. Like, why William Shakespeare's just a playwright? And this is where I've really started connecting the dots between the hero's journey, right? So the hero's journey is really the architecture of how human beings share information. Why is this quote? Why does it resonate with me from 1605 or something like that? Why does it resonate with me still to this day? Because it's timeless. Just like this is timeless, and this is timeless, and this is timeless. These are all the same ideas. We have to keep repackaging it because we lose sight. Our society focuses on the basketballs, not the gorillas. So, what resonates with me about the hero's journey, if you break it down, somebody's got to be inspired to do something in the first place. While in a selling world, this is pretty hard, for the grand scheme of things of doing change, this is pretty easy. Everybody wants something to be different. Then the next stage is, in order to do something different, in order to change, you got to go through an ordeal. You got to go through trials. You got to be tested. You got to overcome fear. And that's constant. It's not just one stage. You got to be committed to change. So many people just don't have discipline to stay committed. You have to experiment with new conditions. People like their own control environment and don't know how to do it. But there's a lot of tools to help you with each one of these things if you're just aware that this is what we're dealing with, and then these are the tools available. So there's a whole body of work to get you through all of this stuff. And what's interesting is we keep reinventing the wheel rather than going back to human nature. Now, what's interesting is if you go through this in quadrants, inspired to do something new, so many people are inspired to do that. Go through the pain personal, go through pain, both personal and real. Few people are willing to confront demons, and few people are willing to have the discipline. Would you stay committed to 11 months of riding that backwards bike to learn how to do it? How many people do it? So the fact that Dustin did that is so remarkable. And these are the things that having the courage to do it in the first place, the courage to put himself out there, the courage to document it, the courage to share it with other people, and the discipline to stick with it. These are the attitudes that make this part work. And that's why finding a change agent is so important, and why we need to all learn how to be change agents ourselves, even in a minimum or if you don't want to be that whole thing, just do what you're told on these engagements in the way that you're asked to do them, as quickly as you're asked to do them, and not overthink it. Because it isn't about you. It's not a test. It's about these. It's about getting through this stuff. Now, where you can help me is this stuff is super easy for me. I actually really enjoy this, and I think this is one area that I need to learn more or be more empathetic about. I enjoy this a lot. It really energizes me. Um, this is fearful as hell for a lot of people. So the whole um, for me, one of the things that I learned doing the hang gliding experience was, as motivating as it was for me, it was intimidating for other people. So I need to learn how to be more relatable to folks, but then I need to help find people who can be relatable to me to help me. Uh, Now the issue is I can get through this stuff really great. The challenge though is how do we share what the lessons learned are? So going through this, you figure it out, you know, uh, being activated, motivated, putting yourself out there, you figure out. But then people over here who didn't go through this, I don't have a lot of patience for, who tell me this is what you did, because it isn't. You don't know what the real secret sauce is because you didn't do this part. So I need a way to help unpack and shape what was really learned. That's really critical. And then the next part then is, now that we know what we've learned and we're excited about it, we can't just go tell it to people. We have to package it up, because we got to bring it back to people over here who don't know what they're doing. They're going to look at the thing that we've got over here and say, we do that already. We do that already. And instead of getting frustrated, we have to recognize that what we have to do from here, let's unpack the win, and then we got to bring it to the masses. So really what it would be, how do we unpack things? What was the motivation? Or like, these are things that I'm bringing up over and again. What was the motivation? What's the story structure for the Townsend meeting? How are people feeling? What's the situation? Da, da, da. What's the plot? What was the arc that was engineered in that day? If we are paying attention to the hero's journey, this helps us see the gorilla, and having the discipline to do it helps us see the gorilla. If we pay attention to our own individual notes, we're focusing on the basketball. Then, wow, now that we have that, how would we unpack and say what happened here? How did that happen? Then, how do we communicate that to people who weren't there? But we have to do it in discipline, or else we're not going to be able to leverage the shared experience. Okay, so let's go back a little bit, and let me frame this out. I want to provide some examples of what this to this means, both in terms of historical things that have already played out that we just take for granted, and then things that happened in business, and just show some of the parallels. So these are all people whom inspire me. This is Galileo, huge fan. I'm so much of a fan of him. He had a vision. Not only he wanted to look at the stars, and he invented a telescope in order to do his analysis. Then he wrote about it and got in trouble and almost got burnt at the stake. It's courage, man. Courage, commitment. This guy rode a backwards bike. Um, you know, Politics aside, I'm pretty inspired by Robert E. Lee. This man had no business. On paper, if by all accounts, he should have gotten his butt whooped. And one of the things that he did that was just so genius to me is that I don't have time to train my volunteers and troops, because if you know anything about how the Civil War happened, just sort of like ramped up and scaled, and it was all volunteers. And one of the things that he did is he had these guys do a whole bunch of, well, he was doing Miyagi before there was Miyagiing. He would have them do drills, he would have them dig ditches, etc. But what they were learning was discipline that they didn't have. And discipline in a military, lack of discipline, here's that word again, uh, it puts lives at risk because a military unit has to work cohesively. Then there's Napoleon and Caesar, and I like both of these. Most people want to look at them as emperors or conquerors, or we've got the Napoleon complex. But what people don't realize and don't talk enough about is what their genius is. Both men, their troops loved them. Why? One, they loved their troops. Two, these their troops knew these guys were the smartest people, and they could count on them to win. One example is this guy got surrounded. He got out tricked by Vercingetorix. And what did he do? Because he's such a great engineer, he wasn't, he erected two forts. and he built a ring of forts and conquered both and then enslaved all of Germania. Amazing. He basically said, well, here's the situation. Here's what we got to do. Here's our answer. What, you want us to build two different forts? Yep. Why don't we attack? Nope. We're going to go do this. He won. What did Napoleon do? He made everything about artillery and focused attacks and all about formations. And his formations just crushed people. It's discipline, vision. It's the synthesis of all of those different parts. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, huge fan of Jesus. The challenge I have here is it's tough for me to, it's good aspiration to ask myself, what would Jesus do? The challenge is it's just not accessible. The guy's the Son of God, for God's sakes. He's divine. I can't live up to that. So all of these other people, what's great about them are they're flawed. And my favorite one out of all of them is George Washington. George Washington did the most remarkable thing to me. When he was he's the only person in the history of the world to have a conquering army and surrender it to an elected official. And the reason that inspires me so much is because that's service. That's to serve. It wasn't about him. It was never about him. Sure, he had his foibles. Yeah, he wore his military uniform around. Yeah, he's got a lot of faults, lots of them. And the more you learn about the faults, the more I respect him. He actually is, talk about success and failure. What we don't know a lot about George Washington, he actually started the French and Indian War by mistake. And he was asked to be out of the British military. Think about that. This guy is remarkable. This guy exudes the hero's journey in real life if you learn about him. Okay, so what does this have anything to do? I already shared an example of an engineered experience. So this was from Forrester. And what we were trying to do is say, look, here's expectations. We develop IT, we publish IP, engage with clients. And what's interesting is when people will allow the model to work, it works really, really well. The difficulty is bringing people into the model. It won't follow the process, or they choose to interpret it. They choose to focus, they choose to see the basketball, not the gorilla. They choose to focus on the hard things or the tasks because they think they're easy, instead of the easy thing, which is focus on the gorilla, which they think is hard. And I think these are very interesting, interesting phenomenon. And a lot of this is building the things as you go. So since this is an engineered experience, first understand the client's expectations. This is empathy. We have to really work hard at that. I'm learning that as much as what people talk about, wanting to go to customer, the skill and appetite to really understand what expectations are, where they come from, and how they work, and how complex customers are. You just don't do it, and they make it all about themselves. So they, push on productitis. You have to develop, the new thing. You got to publish the new thing, and then you have to find a way to interact with clients. this is so similar. Hopefully you can see the pattern back to the hero's journey. So what I want to do is highlight, these are some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I think I'm going to park this and then chunk it out and then get your guys' feedback. How can I organize the details? That of course everybody wants to see details too. How do I balance the details to make sure that we understand what the core patterns are? But in blueprint marketing, the word or theme that we've been talking about is speedy system. I learned how to do this. I learned how to weave research, um, consulting, and technology into one thing. So I have prototypes of how to do this. Um, but my belief is that at the end of the day, if you want to build a system, so let's talk about what a system is. A system is any group of agents that are interacting with each other for a common goal. So by looking at sales, marketing, and customers as three different things, we're not treating them as part of a system. They are part of a system, the knowledge transfer system, ecosystem. So the idea of the speedy system is to connect those dots between those variables. The only way that can be done is through a tech foundation. This to me is a platform. Now, what's great is since this time, so this was the date that, the timestamp here is between 2002 and 2008. Okay, so 6 years. What's interesting is the evolution of tech has evolved. And I'm going to give you some examples of just some ideas to consider and then wrap it up to build off of that. But really what we have to get at is technology is just a platform. It's just a tool. When where we are getting caught up around the axle, I'm not just talking about our team, it's with everybody, is, well, technically video is a technology. So that goes in the technology bucket, but that makes it really hard. What if we just take video as information? We've allowed technology, technology has allowed us to digitize information. So part of it is we have to wrap our heads around what information is. Then we have to classify information into different ways. What's wisdom? What I'm sharing leading with quotes from other people is wisdom, time proven wisdom based on the human condition, the human experience. It is not sociology, it's not psychology, it's something bigger and easier to understand. You just have to mull it and talk about it more. That's that. Then at Forrester, since I didn't want to bring up a lot of technology, one is because Forrester would shoot it down, and two is, I want to hold on to, I wanted to hold on to some of that IP. I went into, so what do people need to know? Do they even have the information required? And then also, how do I create an operating model that can produce a lot of these outputs at scale? This is sort of like, I had over here, sort of the idea of the industrial revolution, and then I really tested it here. What I learned is that experience is the key for an operating model, and I didn't have that word. I had relationship was the word that I had as my design point. Really, it's experience, and execution is key. And I learned a lot, and I want to be able to share what I've learned. Part of what I've learned here is how few people are willing to hear, how things work, how little curiosity there is about how things work. But you're not going to be able to scale or improve performance unless we get that expertise. So part of what I have to do is I'm going to profile individuals and create who can have this conversation. I have to do that, and I have to build profiles for it. And it is what it is, right? I just have to. Then I went from Forrester to Alexander Group, and one of the things that was really interesting is, why is this operating model conversation so hard? And what I learned at Alexander Group was there's a completely different set of drivers that go into telling what a sales organization needs to look at. This is an area we need to do have a lot more empathy of. I think everybody that is on this call is very execution focused, right? We can see the value of technology. We can see the value of operating model. Maybe we're too frustrated about making this work or whatever. You got to let that go. But I don't think any of us are being empathetic enough about what is the pressure that's on a sales leader, a marketing leader, a CFO, and what is their lens? What basketballs are they looking at, and what gorilla are they not seeing that leads them to these ridiculously designed structured departments? Where does that come from? I know where that comes from. It comes from this management consulting view. What we tend to do, anybody in an execution role, is say, let's accept the management consulting's view, and then we'll go and help execute it. That is wrong. That's not stratacution. Stratacution is to challenge the strategy work and to say that's unexecutable. Here's why. Boom, boom, boom. Let me help you see why. The more we do that, the more opportunity we create for execution as an agency. So that's one aha. Now the other aha is, okay, why did I run into so many problems with the operating model? Can this even work? So honestly, that's what the Sales Enablement Society story is about, and why I'm going to keep bringing up, we need to unpack it, 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 we need to unpack it. I'm going to be the world's biggest pain in the ass until we like lean in and just do it. The Sales Enablement Society was a big experiment, particularly from 2017, in 2017. That's all I wanted out of it was, how do I make an operating model work? And I went through a methodical process, and it would be great to interview so we can document it, because I've documented it, and how I document it just doesn't click with people. I need people to go through what the experience is so we can share it with other people. But I designed, I said, look, here are the resources that I've got. Can I make I believe that there's a way to make an operating model work without all the things that people think that they need, and job description, like all this heavy stuff that Alexander Group says you need. And I have become jaded on this stuff, because I know as part of the business model is to design it to be extra complex, so there's more need for them. I know this. uh, and I don't think people pay enough attention to that. Like, just, yeah, whatever, right? But I know there's a better way. And if you embrace humanity, how humans work, back to the story structure here, people operate the same way. Because if this is an observation, if this was true in 500 BC, and here we are 2,500 years later, it's the same thing. And if this was true in 300 AD and still true today, 1,700 years later, and this was true in 2014, it's still true today. And if this was true in 1607, it's still true today. The past is prologue. Humanity thrives when we build on what we know. So then we get into how to make that op model work. Then we get over here, English to English. Then I joined the conference board. Not join, I got a contract with the conference board to help build out a sales leadership council and a sales enablement council. This is another area where I'm really curious as to why more people aren't curious about what did I learn here. But I would say the headline here is English to English translation. Basically, a lot of people in executive positions are experiencing the same thing that people aren't putting words to and describing. In other words, there is this invisible gas that exists. That's we should get Brooke to talk about the power of the Brooklyn Bridge story and how much it resonated with executives. This is the power of illuminating something that everybody sees, but they're putting different definitions to. So English to English has become probably to me, there's two parts, right? Part number one is, I know for sure what the design should be, and this just ain't so. And then on top of that, trying to get all of these different individual departments, because that's what these guys do. They break everything down in departments and job roles and assume sales and marketing departments need to always be organized the way they are. then to make that work, to make the grease work, there ain't any oil in those gears. So we have this big English to English translation problem. And then growth enablement, we got go to customer with all this great stuff. How do we make it accessible for people? That's the thing. We need to go back to all of those webinars and go back and make it accessible to people. So if the webinars are really just a version of this, unpacking, we haven't done this. How do we bring it back to the masses? How do we make it relatable? So there's a massive amount of work still to be done. And I think we could storyboard it out, but we have to know what we're looking at. And we have to look at it through a journey. Okay, so the last point I want to prove out on those two different points. One of the thought experiments I love to do, and I've done this at executive meetings before, and none of you actually have seen this, me do this, but I have this little riff because I always believe in a centering story. And the centering story, it allows some people just hate it because they just tell me what I want to do. They're just too impatient. But one of the things that I like to do is say, I want you to imagine, like just imagine for a second, role play out and imagine that you are the graduating class in engineering at Yale in 1920. And you are a mechanical engineer, and you have two job offers at you. And I have the details of this in the real story. I didn't pull it up together, but one manufacturer is steam locomotives. And in 1920, there wasn't a diesel engine that was in service for full production. But diesel engines, the internal combustion engine was coming out. And of course, everybody said, this is the future. But everybody scoffed at that in business because it's ridiculous. There's not one diesel engine out there today. And what would you choose? Would you go and make your career and spend your next 20 years? So you're graduate, you're 20 years old, and you're going to stay there till 40 and retire working for the steam engine? Or are you going to go to this weird company that's trying to build a diesel engine that doesn't have a single sale yet? Where are you going to go? What would you do? And here's the issue and the power of hindsight. Everybody's going to, well, of course I'd go to the diesel. And I'm just bullshit. That's not what you're going to do. You're going to go with, well, I'm going to feel important because I'm an engineer at this well-known company, rather than, I'm not saying for sure that's what you would do, right? But that's what most people would do. And I'm going to go with the certainty. I'm going to go with the standard. I'm going to go with what everybody else is doing. However, the people who go to the diesel engine one, those are the people that have the right mindset. Those are the people who say, I believe in the future. I'm going to make this happen. And if you bet on this one, when you're 40, you were thriving because these things were pretty much out of service by the 40s. So over your 20-year career, you picked the wrong door. And here's the deal. This kind of engineering doesn't work over here. And that is a reality that happens. And these are the decisions that we have to help people realize that they're making emotive, and why emotive, and really understanding the emotive side and really understanding experience, really understanding the empathy of people is so important, because everything goes back down to that. And to make this personal, way back when in 1997, I kid you not, so I was what, 3 years out of college, 5 years out of college. I was working in a startup, and we were doing stuff around CD-ROMs. I swear to God. And the internet came out, and that killed all of that. But there was this big thing. Have you ever heard of Encarta? So Encarta was this Microsoft version, Encyclopedia Britannica. If you go back and remember back in the day, before internet, before computers, people would sell you encyclopedias door to door. That doesn't exist anymore. But the Encyclopedia Britannica, those guys, they said, oh, well, we got a better way. We'll do them on CDs, and we'll sell you the Britannica ones. And on top of that, we'll put video clips and all that other cool stuff in it. So I'm just using that to just help you think of the time. Now, in this same time, in 1997, PowerPoint existed, but PowerPoint wasn't the number one presentation software. It was Harvard Graphics. Harvard Graphics was kicking it. They were the very first app out there to do presentation software. And the business that I was in, we're trying to sell royalty-free, so content, video content, to help with multimedia authoring. And my job was to do sales. So I went and tried to sell an OEM deal. And I sold OEM deals to multimedia authoring companies. I sold it to PowerPoint even. And I went to the Harvard Graphics people and tried to sell them video, a video package to embed OEM into their product. And they told me no. And here's why. At the time, they had 2.5 million people of their customers on DOS. And they had 1 million customers on Windows. And the video functionality only works on a Windows platform. And they told me they didn't want to alienate their existing customer base. How many years do you think it took for Harvard Graphics to be completely run out of business? Because they were stuck on focusing on the basketball, not on the gorilla. And the challenge then as a salesperson, I'm selling change, I'm selling new. And the more I understand the hero journey of myself, the more I can influence and persuade the people at Harvard Graphics. So I have this etched in my head, and it's a very specific real life example. What are specific real life examples for you? So to pull this back forward, what I'm highlighting is we have to find ways to pause and just recognize we're talking about the gorilla. This is why giving me video feedback is so important. What's the gorilla that you see? I want you to pare it back on the themes because I'm really good at this gorilla part. And I hope we are recognizing that a lot of us, even myself, when I watched this video, I didn't see the gorilla, guys. So I have so much empathy that I can get just as lost in the details of the assignment as anybody else. But I need you to do the work. And it's not even work, really. I need you to do the assignments as they are. They're not Miyagi-san to test you. They are tools to help us develop skills to see the gorilla. Because this is what Acuvia wants from us. Give us something, help us see the thing that we can't see. This is what Mimecast wants. Help us see the thing that we can't see. This is what all of the clients want. Help us see the thing we can't see. This is what you want. Help me see the thing I can't see. This is why we need to be really, really good at doing that. Once we recognize that we need to help people see the thing that they can't see, then it's going to be a lot easier for us to unpack what the experience of Towson was. Then it's going to be a lot easier for us to unpack what empathy really means and how we can document telling the backwards bike. So coming full circle, we have to learn how to help move things through. If you're going to be in the business of helping me, which is what your job is, you need to understand my motivation is to get you to be okay and take the hero journey and realize that it's safe. And we're just asking you to do some simple things, and you're not even exposed to the clients. So you don't have that pressure. Stop it, right? Stop putting that extra pressure on yourself. Just do what's asked here. I'm trying to make this process easy to follow, and I'm bearing the burden of the pressure. We have to get to this way quicker and focus on what we're doing, because without the discipline, then we don't get through this. So then you don't get to the point where you can help me. So I need you to be inspired. If not inspired, then let's just not work together. I need you to be okay to go through this hero's journey. If you're not willing to do this, or carve out the time, or you're spending way too much time on it, we have to simplify it. The way that I have it set up, it shouldn't take you a long time. If you're taking a long time, then you're overthinking, frankly, and you're not tapping in. We've got to find ways or tools to help recognize our goal is to work on this, the gorilla. None of us are going to see it, but we're all experiencing it. We just do the exercise and talk about what we saw and share our findings with each other, then it accelerates, and it's so much easier. We're making it so hard by not talking to each other, not sharing our experiences and having some structure to it. But the only way that you're going to be able to help me over here is if you go through this stuff and can see the same things and go, oh, I get it. Why don't you talk about it this way? Why don't you share it this way? Or my experience was that it was this. Why don't you, here's how you should tell me these things. So Scott, I dig this hero's journey. Here's how I, Walter, would take it. Hey, I dig what you said. Here's how I, Dave, would interpret this. Hey, I'm Brooke. I really like X, Y, and Z. Why don't you organize it this way? Let me do that for you. Let me show you what that'll look like. Um, that's what we're after, is how do we unlock what was done, not how do we get you to be different. That's not the assignment. That's not the ask. The ask is help me unpack this, help me bring it back to the masses, because I've gone through this through the lens of to serve for our customers. Okay, I hope this is helpful. I'm gonna stop making these videos unless I get until I get some feedback back. Is it clear what the mission is? Is it clear what your role is? Is it clear why it's important you understand what your role is? Is it clear why the hero's journey is? Is it clear why we need to spend a boatload more time understanding and relating the hero's journey? Is it clear why I want us to document and storyboard out the backwards bike constantly, or also Moneyball? Why are we doing those kinds of things? I need a lot more. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? What is the goal? Why are we doing this? What is the goal? If we talk more about that, we're going to get way more in the lens, in the zone of helping people see the gorilla, and then helping document what the backwards bike experience is so more people can do it. Thank you very much. Look forward to getting feedback.